everybody. Today we're joined by the author Mark Barber. If you've got any questions for him or myself, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get around to either answering them in another video or on Facebook. If you haven't already liked the Facebook page, go and have a look for it, Conflict in Miniature, and give it a like. I hope you enjoy. Thank you very much. So, hi there, Mark.
Hello, Gaz. How's it going?
Yeah, lucky Downey. I don't know how it is your end.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of describing it.
So I've still got to kind of go to work, 'cause apparently I'm a key worker. However, I've got a few days off, so we're doing some recording. How about you? Are you isolated at home?
I'm in a similar position, really. I am key worker, but trumped by another key worker in my household, so I'm less key. So I'm at home a bit more than normal.
Awesome. Doing much hobby?
Yeah. I'm doing more writing than I am painting. Deadlines are looming, and I'm also I think similar to a lot of people our age, if I can say that I kind of did the hobby a lot as a teen and up to there. Then you get to that point where you think you're too cool for it, and you step away from it, and then you hit an age where you don't care and you just enjoy it and you get back into it. But getting back into it, I've had such skill fade, and I've never been a particularly good painter, and I'm not getting any better. So I'll carry on writing and occasionally look at models and wish I could do them justice, but don't really dare paint them.
I think my painting's actually got better as I've got older. I think getting past 30, I sort of started that exact same thing what you said. I just sort of went, you know what, I've spent the last 8 years effectively being ashamed of this hobby and trying to hide it, and now I'm just like, you know what, sod it, I'm a nerd. Yeah, I paint toy soldiers, and ever since I've done that, I think I've got better at painting, and starting on this writing business. That's a massive step forward for me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? The writing. I mean, it's exactly the same, I think, as painting, in that it's a perishable skill. If you step away from it, you get a skill fade. And I'm certainly not, claiming I'm God's gift to writing or anything, but I can, at least in the same way you can look at your painting and see a progression. I can look at stuff I wrote years ago and go, oh, I could do that better now.
Yeah.
And but yeah, my painting. Anything gritty and military, I've got a fighting chance at doing. But anything clean cut from other, game systems, they're impressive. I cannot do, slick, good-looking stuff. I can have a stab at stuff that's supposed to be mud spattered and rubbish. I can do that some justice, but that's about it.
Good old olive drab and beige, yes. Khaki.
Yeah, my painting is like my diet. Just any shades of brown and beige, and it'll be fine. Yeah, no salad, no fruit.
No green. Yeah, no good green.
No vibrant green.
No, I think that's. You know what? I think that a lot of people hide in that sort of that bubble of safety blanket of World War II, because there is all those drab colours. I mean, if you, for the viewers that are watching this, in the top corner here, we've got the one of the books that Mark wrote, which is the Battle of the Bulge. But the guy on the front is just like brown and green, and you can sort of, your highlights can really, they look really good like that. The problem is with doing bright, vivid colours is that you've got less room to hide. You can't hide your work when it's vivid green or vivid yellow or red. Even I've come across that with my painting. I think my wife is pushing me in the direction of doing really bright stuff, because a lot of the time my painting's always been quite dark. Have you ever tried sort of vivid colours? Because I know you've been talking about a project you've been wanting to do for a while, haven't you?
Yeah. The vivid colours, I've certainly tried it. I just haven't met as much success, because when I try and highlight it, the highlighting doesn't come across neat and clean. It comes across, kind of if you highlight khaki battle dress, and I've seen some people who've painted their Bolt Action armies almost as if it's like comic book style, and cool, each to their own, and it has a certain visual appeal, but for me, I want it to try and look realistic and almost covered in mud and blood. So my painting, it tends to be rough and pretty dark.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that kind of sci-fi kind of stuff, yeah, you go for vivid colours, and then I use the same highlighting technique, and it doesn't look good at all. It really doesn't.
It's a difficult one because I mean there's so many techniques out there now. This wide world of the internet has sort of caught on recently with the hobby world, and there's so many people out there with blogs and all this sort of stuff. And I think it's very difficult sometimes to actually find a good technique you can use, and you've just got to sort of like cherry pick the ones that are good and the ones that you want to use and that actually work. I mean, I've gone through so many models that I've tried something I've seen on YouTube and gone, oh god, this just doesn't work. But then other stuff is just like it's clicked and it's like, oh damn, that looks awesome. I think it's trying to sort of collate all those ideas, and I think that's one of the things I want to do on this channel. Maybe, I mean, you've asked for sort of like some help with painting your Eldar, and maybe doing that sort of how-to guide and using all the stuff I've found that works really well.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? That everyone sort of has their own style and what they want to try and steer towards. But also, if you play more than one game system, you're probably going to find that you do need to adapt your style.
Yeah.
And I haven't. I have got, here's a style which for US infantry, for British commandos, for whatever it is, works all right, actually, because it's various shades of brown and cut and whatever. But then when you start to apply it to other things, to GW, Kings of War, whatever it might be, where there's more bright, vibrant stuff, it doesn't work. It really doesn't. You can't just say, here's a load of different shades of brown and a dark ink wash, bang, we're good to go. There's a very different style to it, and I haven't discovered that style yet.
That's the thing. It's all about experimenting a bit, and this is why I think I've got a lot of sort of low-key models, just old Space Marines lying around that I can sort of dig out every now and then again when I get some sort of a brainwave and go, oh, you know what might work, and then just sort of, you're not too worried about just smashing through this model because it's just meh, you're not bothered about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're getting some hobby done. Woo! Well, kind of, because we've got to look after kids. So yeah, we're locked away. So I'm hoping we're going to get some views and some people listening to these videos and actually liking them. I hope so. It's why I'm dragging you in, because I'm sort of like bribing people with good audience, good guests.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're lucky in that respect that I really love the sound of my own voice. So I'm delighted to just keep talking. So that helps.
That's good, because I'm pretty sure people aren't here for me.
I don't know.
So, we are going to be talking about today is the books you've written for Warlord Games and Osprey Publishing on Bolt Action. So far, you've got 3 published. We'll touch on 2 more that are in the works, mainly because I helped with them. We'll touch on those later, but for the meantime, we've got the 3 publications. So which ones did you do then?
I kicked off with Battle of the Bulge. After that was New Guinea, and then Battle of France, and then in and around that, some other smaller projects. So the Kelly's Heroes box sets, when they came out, I did the rules for the characters, but I didn't do the scenarios. That was done by another fella. And one of the Eastern Front box sets, going back a little while now, came out with a kind of pamphlet with it, which I wrote the history stuff for. So yeah, and then some various online articles as well. But the main 3 have been those, Battle of the Bulge, New Guinea, and Battle of France.
Awesome. I you know what? We've known each other for a little while now, and I did not know you did the Kelly's Heroes book, the Kelly's Heroes stuff. You know what's hilarious? I don't think I told you this actually, but I ran a tournament at Imps. I've been doing it for the last 4 years. I've stopped now just because I've got other priorities at the minute. So I ran this event a couple of weeks back, just before everything got locked down, thankfully. 30 odd players, really, really good fun day. And it was 1944 themed. So everyone had to bring, doesn't matter any theatre, you had to bring a list that was 1944. And one of my close mates, Wayne, he went, Gaz, yeah, can I bring Kelly's Heroes? And I went, well, yeah, it's 1944, yeah, why not? And he goes, do you want to have a look at the rules? I went, oh, I'll have a quick skim. I had a look through it and went, yeah, that's fine. And I didn't really actually read too in depth until he came back to me after the first game and went, oh, this is actually really quite good in low points. I'm like, is it? You've only got like 4 dice though. He had a lot of fun with it. One of his opponents didn't really like it, but
yeah, we specifically put on the rules that this is not for tournaments because
sod it. I let it in.
Yeah, there's tournaments, obviously, and some are very low key, chilled out. Some are a lot more serious. But this was very much that we're not even adding points to this. These are just a load of silly rules, and it was there to kind of poke fun at the classic Hollywood way of portraying war. Back in an era where let's avoid the horrors of real war and let's just make it cool. So the rules were kind of about that, and giving Big Joe the Hollywood NCO rule doing for oddballs is basically all the psychedelic rules, and that if you shout out certain things at certain times, you get bonuses. It was a lot of fun doing it. A lot of fun.
So I was actually quite fortunate, I think, because on the day we had a dropout. So we had odd numbers. So I was using a Market Garden, US Paras and British list, which is actually just behind me. You can't really see it, but everyone else can. So I took some daft things like Dutch Resistance, had a Vicar. Again, one of the rules you came up with. So I whacked that in there, and that was a lot of fun to use. Bunch of US Paras and a couple of Cromwells. It was really good, though, on the day, because it meant that I get to choose who I played against, effectively. I was like, I'm not going to win, because I'm like the Gumby player. I'm the spare. I'm just there to have a laugh. And I just picked people I wanted to play. And I played against Wayne with the Kelly's Heroes stuff. And I was like, mate, it was sectors, so it was like the table get into different table quarters, and I was like, mate, I'm not going to play this tactically. I am going to literally charge at you. And he goes, oh, okay, that's fine. I wasn't trying to beat him or anything, but the problem was, first turn, my Cromwell rocked up and took out his Sherman, so the oddball Sherman. One shot with a medium gun, 6s to hit, bam, dead. Whoops. Damn. And then from then on, it was just all those crazy rules, like the snake eyes thing, like you roll for his morale, but you've got to give it that. I can't even do that. I'm trying to do it on the camera now. It's just not like the Clint Eastwood stare.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to play against. It was so funny.
I mean, it was kind of cool that I got the opportunity to do it. In that Warlord announced they were doing these models, and Kelly's Heroes is one of those things where either you're not really aware what it is as a movie, or you're fanatically obsessed with it and can quote every line. And I'm the latter. So when Warlord said they were doing it, and I'd already written some stuff for them, I just sent them an email saying, I will do anything if you let me write the rules for this. And they kind of came back and went a bit psychotic about this, but okay, go for it. And it was really good fun. And Francesco, a friend of mine who worked on Battle of the Bulge with me, he did the scenarios for it.
Oh, okay.
So he put all those together. Well, I put all the rules together, and we just sort of had fun with a lot of things about stuff like Hollywood German infantry, that they have to have rules for tactical ineptitude. And they get a ludicrous amount of MP40s, because you never really see a Hollywood German, from the 70s or 60s. A German soldier on screen never has a rifle. They've always got a submachine gun.
Yeah.
And just all stuff like that. The Kelly's Heroes novel, which came out, quotes the Tiger as having, I think, it's something ludicrous, like an 150mm gun. So, because the guy hadn't done his research properly.
Yeah.
120 whatever it was. So I made rules for a super heavy anti-tank gun doesn't cover that. We had to go uber heavy anti-tank gun and make it even better, even though the armor on the thing was terrible. So the Hollywood Tiger is basically a T-34 because that's what the real thing was.
Yeah.
With a new heavy tank gun. So yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff to do with it, and it's one of those things where when I've spoken to players and been to the odd road, that sort of thing, the campaign books always come up, and we always have a good chat about that, and it's always great to have the feedback and online and social media and all that. Kelly's Heroes has never been mentioned to me. It's one of those things which was, I think, the most fun I've had with Bolt Action. But I've never heard anything back, so I didn't know if anyone had ever used it. So it's quite cool to hear that someone actually did.
No, and I tell you what, he won. So Wayne, every single year he came to the Imps Open, he has won best theme because he goes all out on his theme. The stuff he does is amazing. I'll have to. I'll ping up pics on here, just showing you the theme of his army. I'll bring it up. I would have had it prepped, but I didn't realise. But it was brilliant. Because he always brings not just like the visuals, but he brings audio as well. So like last year, he had a British 6-pounder ammunition box. Inlaid in the top of it was his army in display, and he had like a little field kitchen with chefs and all these men running round and with his army on it. And then he has music playing in the background. And for the Kelly's Heroes one, because when I asked people to put up their armies for consideration for theme and best painting, put them all on one table so we can have a look at them. And there's his stood there with this box, all this stuff around, and then the Kelly's Heroes music and sound clips from the film just like playing in the background.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'll get the pictures up. It's so good. It was so good. Shout out to Wayne. I'm going to make him watch this now.
Myself and Francesco wanted to follow up after that and say, look, we totally get that Warlord have got their vision for what they want to release, and that's fine. But can we go a little bit rogue and off-piste here and do an entire publication on Hollywood movies? And we want to parody the lot of them. From Guns of Navarone to Fury and everything in between. Make special rules. So you could pick a Hollywood character and then shove them in different scenarios and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there was it was met with a bit of a lukewarm reception, so we never did it. Whether we do it as a sort of unofficial thing at some point, I don't know. But
I would always be down for a bit of Eagle Has Landed. One of my favourite war films, and I absolutely love the book. Absolutely love Eagle Has Landed, and I've been meaning to do some sort of project based on that for ages.
I mean, particularly seeing as Michael Caine's character, I think he's one of the many, many Hollywood Steiners. I think it's Major Steiner.
Yep. Kurt Steiner. Yeah. Oberst Kurt Steiner.
Yeah.
A military hero.
He's not a major. But I mean, Warlord have done the model for that.
I've got him. Yeah, he's it's a shame. Again, unprepared. In fact, wait 2 seconds. I'm going to go and grab him. Back in a second, audience. Hang on.
I'll just provide some light relief, maybe with some elevator music while we're waiting here. This is awkward.
Oh, I'm still here. I'm just sort of in the background.
No, he's still there.
Yeah, I am here. So he's actually based for my Italy army, but I need to get a photo of him. But there you go. So I've done him in a summer Luftwaffe uniform. But there you go. There is a model for him because there you go. He's carrying a Mark II Sten. So yeah, I've got an Oberst Kurt Steiner.
There's all Cross of Iron. I'm trying to remember which actor it was, but Alt plays Corporal Steiner.
Yes.
Possibly a relation.
Steiner's a myth.
Yeah.
I love that film as well.
Fantastic movie. And yeah, a bit of Hollywood trivia. It was supposed to have a massive battle at the end, but they ran out of money. So the budget got lost. So the end, which a lot of people think is an anticlimax, which I absolutely love, which is that the evil officer, because all Hollywood officers are evil and incompetent, They go out to fight, and he fires off his magazine from his submachine gun, and then doesn't know how to reload it.
Yeah.
While a soldier is shaking his head in contempt at this awful German officer, and that's kind of how it ends, with Steiner laughing at him. And that is because they ran out of money. It was supposed to be an enormous battle, but another cracking model from Warlord, and again it would be another. There's so many opportunities to say, by Warlord's own admission, this is supposed to be a war movie kind of game, not a war
documentary.
Game. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's not supposed to have atrocities of war. It's supposed to be lots of big bangs, lots of excitement, fast pace, like a movie. So I'd at some point really love to revisit doing movie themed rules as well as the historic. So guys, rooted, you're in.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. I'm down for that. Just on touching back on something you said earlier about, like, I think you're right. The ending to Cross of Iron is perfect, and I think had they have done the battle, it might not have been as good. There's another TV program, one of my favourites of all time, which is Blackadder, and Blackadder goes forth. So the ending to Blackadder Goes Forth is very poignant, and it's chilling, really.
Yeah, it is tear-jerking, the end of it. It is really, really well done, but I won't steal your thunder. I know the bit behind it.
So, going back on exactly what you said, that wasn't the original intent. The original intent was to show them all dying in different ways. And they sort of just cut it and went, no, actually, that doesn't work. And I'm so glad they didn't do that, because I think that would have... The whole comedy series is sort of that ironic comedy about how terrible the war was, and how most officers were incompetent in some way. And the fact that they had that sort of sombre end to it really brought it all together and gave it meaning. Whereas if I think they'd gone comedy at the end, I don't think it would have been the same.
I know. I saw a documentary, because they've still got the footage of the original ending. And it basically just has them all go over the top, take 2 paces, and then all just kind of, shout out in pain, drop to their knees and sag one. And it looks so cheesy, low budget, and awful.
Yeah.
So the way it did it was just like, wow. If you're gonna a series which has sometimes been misunderstood as making fun of war, and it's not. It's making fun of people.
Yeah.
Who made stupid decisions in war.
Yeah.
And I think it's very respectfully done. And the ending, it's the perfect way. Sadly, tragically, you couldn't have those characters survive.
No.
The way they did it was a very respectful way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so stay tuned if you're watching this for some movie stuff, because you never know. I think it's something we both would love to do. How did you actually get started with Warlord then? Did they contact you, or vice versa?
What happened was, I'd been writing as a sort of pocket money paid hobby for a few years. So I wrote some straight Second World War history books with Osprey published, and there's a whole story behind how I started with that, which took up too much time and isn't that exciting anyway.
Okay.
After I'd written with Osprey, I then had a little bit of a CV. So again, whole story behind it, but I ended up as a historical consultant for a PC and PlayStation game called War Thunder.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I was doing some bits and bobs with that. After that ran its course, and we kind of parted on very amicable terms and said, I want to write something different, and they said, yeah, we think we've got enough out of you, and it was all fine. I wanted another project, so I went back to Osprey and said, what have you got going on at the moment? And we chatted through a few things, and they said, well, now you've got multimedia experience, and something that's a little out of the ordinary. And I kind of stumbled on Bolt Action. Okay. And it was coincidentally at exactly the same time that in my day job, me and a load of friends were hitting that age where you all came out of the woodwork and said, yeah, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I was a war gamer.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back in because I don't care about what's cool and what isn't.
I'm a nerd.
So,
I'm a nerd.
yeah, it was just there was so many of us, and so I just thought, you know what, let's give it a go. So I got in touch with Warlord and said, here's me. I've got a track record of having written some stuff. I'm not a professional author, but I've got a few titles under my belt. I've got a few successful years as a historical consultant in something that isn't just straight writing, that is supporting a franchise. I'd really like to do some stuff. So, quite rightly, they gave me some hoops to jump through first and said, well, let's start with some online articles. So the very first thing I submitted was the 4/7 Royal Marine Commando list.
Yep.
And that went better than I think both of us thought it would, because I kind of did it. And when I wrote that, I hadn't been playing the game for very long. I had a good understanding-ish of it, but I hadn't, I wouldn't say my understanding of the game was as good as it was later on. So I did that. I had a bucket load of help from the Royal Marine Museum.
Yeah.
They were fantastic. And then, so when they came back and said, you know what, we're that happy with this submission that we're going to give it the official, this can be sort of, used in tournaments if the tournament organizer agrees that this has got the official stamp. So it went from there. And then I did another couple of articles. And then when, I said to them after that, look, in terms of the campaign books and that sort of thing, would you be happy for me to just do a bit of one, to do a scenario, some box out, something like that? And they came back and said, no, we want you to do a full one.
Wow.
So it went from there, really.
And then it said the Battle of the Bulge was the first one.
They gave me a choice of 2 titles because that's the thing. When you're writing for Warlords, and they are always open to suggest from their authors, they are, but also, they've got a cohesive plan of, we want to link this book with this miniature release, with this box set. They've got a whole load of plans, and the authors have to fit in with that more than saying, here's what I want to do. It doesn't work like that, for very good reasons. So they came to me and said, look, here's the titles we want to be written. So we boiled it down to, here's a couple of potential ones for you to write. And they said, do you want to do Battle of the Bulge or do you want to do New Guinea? And I was like, New Guinea? That's impossible. That is really difficult. I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
I'll take Battle of the Bulge. Not knowing New Guinea would come back to haunt me a few months later when no one had taken it on.
Yeah.
I took Battle of the Bulge as my first one because I just thought, you know what, having done the stuff with War Thunder, German and American stuff is relatively safe ground because it's so well documented. It's meticulous in its record keeping in a lot of areas, and it's either a language, it's either my language with the Americans or with the Germans, at least it's Western Europe, that when you start to stray off the beaten track into the likes of the next tier down of Soviet Russia,
Japan,
it gets more complicated. Japan gets very, very complicated because the amount of stuff that's mistranslated or simply hasn't been translated yet. Or the amount of records they burnt at the end of the war when they knew it was over. So Japan is very difficult. And then you get into the real nitty-gritty when you're starting to write about the likes of Hungary, and it sounds a very derogatory way to say it, the minor nations, if you call it that.
Especially with the post-Eastern Bloc communism takeover, a lot of those countries weren't those countries for a long time, if that makes sense. And but when you step into areas of this, and that, again with War Thunder, what I learned when you're starting to work with, again, sort of amateur / semi-professional level historians from all these different countries, you realise very quickly that for us here in Britain, what we were taught in school about the history of the Second World War is not the same as what other countries were taught. No.
Not in any way, in so many ways. And when you get told, we saved the world with the Battle of Britain, other countries don't see it that way.
No, of course not.
Even when you say, we turned the tide of history with D-Day and the invasion of Norway. In Southeast Asia, they don't see it that way necessarily. They'll start to say, what do you know about the Second Sino Japanese War. What do you know about the assault on Nanking? It's
Yeah.
That's what's huge to them. So depending on which part of the country, the world you're from, history is seen in a different way.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. And I think that probably of all these, most came into being with Battle of France, because when I started to read the French sources and work with guys from the French Bolt Action community, you just realise that all of the British myths about the Battle of France are just that, myths, and that is not the truth at all.
Speaking as a French player as well, you look into the Battle of France and the retreat and everything like that. It wasn't necessarily the French fighting man at all, or the equipment necessarily. I mean, arguably, the French tanks were a lot better than the German tanks, and there's a lot more of them as well. The problem is their senior command was still fighting World War One.
Yeah. Well, the point on tanks is an interesting one. Totally agree with what you said. I think a lot of it was the scattergun approach to the deployment of tanks the French utilised. Instead of the Germans concentrating them in armoured divisions, the French were just scattering them all over the place, so they were never concentrated. There was a little bit everywhere. But also the French, for all of the baseless accusations of cowardice that the French get for the Battle of France, that the French fighting man was one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Their army was one of the best in the world.
It was one of the largest as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the German casualty figures in the Battle of France, they are significant. The Germans lost a lot of men. It wasn't a walkover at all. It was fast, but it was not a walkover.
Yeah.
And but if you could throw an accusation of cowardice anywhere, you possibly could at the French leadership.
Yeah.
If anyone let anyone down, French generals and politicians let the French soldiers and the French people down.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
The French soldier front line did a sterling job for the most part.
Well,
but of course, there's primary source accounts of French soldiers fleeing at the first sight of a fight, but there are about British soldiers as well, and there are about German soldiers.
Yeah.
There are about all nations. So yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting process to research it.
Now, I think that really shows through, going back to what you're saying about the French fighting man, in the late war French. So, like, for instance, in the Battle of the Bulge, there's the first book, obviously, you wrote, and it's one of my favourite books out of all of the Bolt Action ones. I love the section in there on late war French. And that does show you that, because I think this is the myth that the French gave up and that was them done for the rest of the war, and there were the only thing they contributed was some stupid character driven LOLO resistance fighters, and it's utter nonsense. You know, they kept fighting all the way through the war in the desert, and then during the liberation of Europe, and they carried on fighting through into Germany as well.
Yeah, there's 2 points I think that, starting off on, I suppose, the darker one is the resistance. That first off, after the end of the Second World War, the number of fighting age French men who claimed to be a part of the resistance was staggering.
Yeah.
Absolutely staggering. And yet the number of men and women who were involved in active French resistance endeavours was really quite small.
Yeah.
And it was very small compared to other countries like Greece and Yugoslavia. But that's actually a badge of honour for the French resistance more, that they had less volunteers. They had less people willing to. So those who did volunteer really had their work cut out for them. The French resistance was basically was not as active as Hollywood would have you think. Not until the end, when when the Allies were coming to invade, and all of a sudden there was a legitimate plan where you could say, you know what, we can get involved now, and there's a good chance of victory. Otherwise, it's suicide.
Well, yeah, so, a lot of eyes on the world had seen what had happened in Warsaw. You had the Warsaw Uprising when they heard the Russians were on the doorstep, and then lo and behold, the Russians didn't. They stopped, and unfortunately, the uprising was completely crushed, and they were all effectively massacred, and it's horrendous. And you've got to think to yourself, it's all right sitting in your armchair at home and saying, well, I would fight. Well, would you, knowing that you've got, I don't know, a cricket bat to swing at a German soldier who's aiming an MP40 at you?
Yeah, it's that's the thing, isn't it? It's whenever you look back at history and what real people, by and large, you've got to look through. You've got to be respectful. You've got to be respectful about it. That being said, there are certain times when doing the research, I found it hard to be respectful. When I wrote the New Guinea book, I learned a lot about the way the Japanese conducted themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And which I had absolutely zero respect for, and thought, you know what, this is tricky. New Guinea was difficult because any war is atrocious, but warlord, and of course they want to educate, and that's what a big part of the history in the books is about. But it's not supposed to be a fun experience. Still, supposed to be about, you know, getting a beer and a takeaway with your mates and rolling some dice and chilling out. And it's supposed to be a fun thing.
And not worried about atrocities.
You don't want special rules for what happens after, you know, to the prisoners and all that sort of stuff. You don't. But it would be disrespectful to completely ignore it. You've got to put something in. And the New Guinea book was the hardest to write because every single page I was reading from historical documents about the Japanese conduct in the New Guinea campaign was stomach churning. Yeah. So it was that difficult one. That was difficult to put together.
Yeah, I bet. Right, well, we're going to have a bit of a break now, and then we'll come back and have a bit more of a chat. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the Mark Barber episode. Part 2 is coming up just shortly. Right now, we've got a giveaway. So, we've got 2 Mark Barber books. We've got The Battle of France and New Guinea to give away. All you need to do is subscribe to the channel and you'll be in chance of winning. Once we hit 50 subscribers, we'll give away 1. And once we hit 100 subscribers, we'll give away the other one. So, make sure you get the page out there, share it, and you'll be in a chance of winning one of these books. Thanks very much, guys. Enjoy part 2. We're back in now. So that was the most difficult. So we've talked about the most fun you've had writing, and obviously that Papua New Guinea being the most difficult. Now, I think you've said to me before that Papua New Guinea was difficult again because of not having the knowledge, the necessarily in-depth knowledge of it. I mean, you've obviously got the general pretty good knowledge of the other theatres, because let's be honest, like you've alluded to before, with the westernized view, we tend to know a lot more about that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
With New Guinea, obviously that was more of a challenge. Now, I know, because I've worked with you on 2 of the upcoming ones, which again we're going to talk about in a bit, it's not just you writing this book on your own, is it?
Absolutely not. I think, from my point of view, I'm closer to a project manager than the sole author. So many people involved at so many levels. And when I say project manager, I only mean my part before it then gets submitted to Warlord. Yeah. And they then, because I'm working for them, they are, you know, the bosses in this. So I manage my part of the project, which means working with loads of people. And I think New Guinea was possibly the apex of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so with New Guinea, obviously, you've the other books, you've got an understanding of who you need to talk to, and you can sort of pick up on that, and there's specific books and things you can look at. But with, like, New Guinea, where did you start? Because, like, if Warlord had offered me that as well, because I'm exactly the same with my knowledge of the Far East campaign is pretty basic. I know the dates of the big battles, and that's pretty much it, other than what I've read in New Guinea. Where did you start? Did you sort of go, well, bugger, am I going to have to... Did you pick up a few books to read or ask certain people?
Yeah, both of those.
Yeah.
In terms of for all three, because it's like even with the Battle of the Bulge, where you go, yeah, I've got a rough idea what goes on here. Battle of France, I thought I had a rough idea before I read it and realised how small the British involvement was. But New Guinea, I had no idea, absolutely none. So it started off internet, open source stuff, broad brush, read some web articles and go, okay, I'm starting to get to just a real simple overview of what went on here. Then once you've got that, I got some. I bought some books from some good historians who'd done their research. So Ghost Mountain Boys and War at the End of the World were my two main sources for the New Guinea one, both of which were fantastic put together. And then there's People, which is one of the great things about the social media age, and also just speaking to Warlord. I think that loads of people deserve shout-outs for New Guinea, but the two who deserve the biggest shout-outs by a country mile are Patch Adams and Brian Cook.
Yeah.
These two guys, a lot of people know from the community anyway, for a whole raft of reasons. But they had already put together a Armies of Australia PDF.
Yeah.
So I'd done Battle of the Bulge and thought, wouldn't it be nice to add in an extra army? So we do the late war France stuff. And when it came to New Guinea, it's like, right, I've got this great idea. I'm going to do an Armies of Australia.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks into starting getting my sources together, Armies of Australia PDF gets released. And it's like, oh, this is awkward. So I got in touch with them. And Brian told me, that was always, whilst they were very happy with what they'd done, it was always sort of a placeholder. So they were both delighted to say, take this work and let's build it, let's make it bigger.
Yeah.
Which is what we did. And also, I was really lucky again in that Brian had visited most of the actual sites.
Okay, that's very cool.
Of the battlefields for the 12 scenarios. So I went through and said, these are the 12 scenarios I'm thinking of doing. He came back and said, you know what, here's some little tweaks I'd suggest, and which I went with. But it was just little things like, let's just looking through New Guinea, a good example. First Battle of Kokoda. Yeah. So when I wrote the scenario for the first Battle of Kokoda, Brian could come back with a whole load of photos and say, the way you've described the physical battlefield isn't quite right. Here are photos of me there at the battlefield, and this is what it looked like.
That's very cool.
And so that, it really added an amazing element to it, to have all the input from Patch and from Brian.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, those are the three you've got published that we've talked about a little bit. We do know of two upcoming releases. The first of which we can talk about because it's on Amazon now. Due for release in September. However, we might think that's going to get pushed aside due to world events at the minute. But that is Normandy. So post D-Day, Normandy. Because this is something I've sort of got from a lot from the British public. They know about D-Day and Normandy and D-Day, but most of them seem to think that we invaded the beaches and parachuted in on D-Day, and then that was it. A couple of days fighting, done. And it wasn't at all. It was an incredibly bloody campaign to fight through Normandy. And this first book that's coming out, the first one I've got involved in, and I had a whole lot of fun doing it. But do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, sure. The first one is the Anglo-Canadian sector of the Normandy campaign. So it's basically what happened after Gold, Juno and Sword, and moving through to the end of the Normandy campaign and the push towards Germany. Yeah. It kind of kicks off from, the first scenario set on the afternoon of D-Day. So it's like, we're off the beaches and we're into fighting in built-up areas after the beaches. So the afternoon of June the 6th, and then moves right through. It's exactly as you said, that it isn't just about D-Day. It's about this enormous campaign.
Yeah.
And if I'd say for anyone who isn't that familiar with it but wants to know a bit more, if you want to know the crux of what was going on for about 3 months or the better part of it, maybe the first part of that at least, with the British and Canadian armies, read about the Battle of Caen. Because that city was absolutely central, absolutely pivotal to the British and Canadian efforts in the Normandy campaign. Meanwhile, the Americans were off doing something very different. That's kind of... It's about the Battle of Caen and a lot of things leading up to it and a lot of things that fell out from the aftermath of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, the thing that I think most people are going to be really interested in, because I know a couple of people that play the scenarios, and what I don't think a lot of people actually realise out there when making these books, that I didn't realise until I started, writing these sort of things, is the scenarios take a lot of time to write and to get play tested to make sure that they're balanced.
Yeah, I think that is... It's really weird in that the amount of effort is inversely proportional, I think, to what most people take from these books.
Yeah.
So the scenarios take a world of effort, and from the people I've spoken to who come back and say what they use the books for, people tend to like new units and theatre selectors.
Yeah.
And the scenarios don't get as much of a tryout, and I've got to admit I'm exactly the same. If I see one of these new books come out, I don't necessarily think, right, which scenarios can I use? I just think, what new stuff is there to mess around with?
That's exactly it. I mean, as soon as I get hold of a new book, I'm literally, where's the start of the new stuff, and flick straight to it.
Yeah. I think the writing, and I don't know if I do know because I know we've spoken about it, that you found it the same. That's the most fun part of writing it.
Yeah.
Is new units and new selectors.
Yeah.
That's like really fun and interesting to research and put together and test. Not obviously the testing gets farmed out, but we can talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
And the scenarios, that's straight historical research. That's drier, and
it is,
and it's pretty time consuming.
Very, very.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the most fun part of it is doing the new units, and I think it's very difficult but fun at the same time, because the problem you've got with the new units is you can't just... I've seen this in a couple of the books where they've got like German Grenadier unit with one slightly different option. They've got one more SMG than all the other ones. I think what I try to do when I've written my units, and this is definitely apparent in all of your books, is something different. Yeah,
I think you want to try and make it something different and also not breaking the game.
Yeah.
Because it's all about balance. At its highest level, it's about balancing new content between historic players and tournament players.
Yeah.
Which can overlap people who are interested in both elements. But I've spoken to a lot of players who, like some people, it is all about the history and the accuracy. Whereas then there's others who, no, I want a list that will win at a tournament or give me a competitive chance, and I'm not interested in the history at all.
Yeah.
And then there's everything in between. So you want to try and have a real balance, a broad brush of something for everyone. And then when it gets to the new units, you want to have the literal game balance of what you want is something that's useful, but not something that's going to break the game.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, it will be perfectly balanced, and you're always aiming for that. But you've got to be realistic and go, you know what, I'm probably not going to achieve that. I can try, I might, I'm probably not going to have it perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
So, if in doubt, you make it less powerful.
Yes.
Because if you can't absolutely smash the nail on the head, it is better to introduce a new unit that people will go, it's a bit rubbish, than a new unit which everyone goes, I want that because it's horribly unbalanced and I'll win with it.
That's the thing.
The worst thing you can do.
We don't want and this is, I think, the biggest thing in the community, because you sort of get an idea. Now, obviously, not everyone that plays this game is on Facebook, but I'd say the vast majority are. And across the span of all the different Facebook groups, the big thing people don't want this to do is to turn into 40k and have that sort of codex creep, if you know what I mean. Like, oh, the Brits have got this amazingly awesome new thing that breaks the game. Like, oh, well, the Germans need to one-up that now.
Yeah, I remember like in back in the 90s, second edition 40k when they brought out Codex Space Wolves.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you mean they've all got one higher weapon skill for free? The whole army. What's the point in playing any other Space Marine?
Yeah.
And then I think it was in Epic, they brought out like Chaos and said, oh, by the way, Chaos have got access to anything in the Space Marine list. And then they've got all this extra stuff. So
yeah.
What's the... Yeah, and... So yeah, I would much rather make a new unit that the feedback was never use it. You don't want that. That's not the optimal outcome.
No, of course not.
I'd much rather that than be the guy who brought Wolfguard Terminators to the
game. Yeah. So, I mean, it's getting these things and using them, and I think for one of the biggest things that I've learned whilst writing new units is, and I think we've done a pretty good job of it in the couple we've worked on, is a small section in that text that specifically says where that unit can be used. Yeah,
apologies for Battle of the Bulge where I forgot that on the INR units. That was my fault, not Warlords. It's where they can be used because... Yeah, there's so many units you get where it's maximum one per reinforced platoon and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about balancing that because you might come out with something which is massively effective, but you can only have one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so just having a sort of look at some of have you got any particular favourite units out of the 3 books, publications, and any upcoming stuff? Anything you particularly find as your favourite?
The thing I've been most excited about doing is the predominantly British and inter-allied commandos in the new Anglo-Canadian book.
Awesome.
Because it's basically the feedback I had about 4-7 Commando, the list I did years ago now, has been really encouraging and really welcome and great. But I look at it and think, you know what, I was very lucky. I did really well, that one, but I can do better now.
Yeah.
So this is what I hope is better. So the idea is this completely replaces the 4-7 Commando list.
Awesome.
So people might be thinking, well, I really liked my 4-7 Commando list. This new list, whatever you had in the 4-7 Commando list, this new list will allow you to pretty much replicate it.
Awesome.
So it's not so much... delete it all and start again. It's a 4-7 Commando with a whole load more stuff bolted on around it, so you can tailor your force to represent a lot more different things.
Yeah.
So, for example, what a lot of people might not realise is, well, what is a commando? In this day and age,
Royal Marine.
The overwhelming majority of commandos in the British Armed Forces are Royal Marines.
Yeah.
The Royal Marines have the commando role. In World War II, that wasn't the case. In 1940, when the commandos were set up, it was British Army.
Yeah.
In 1942, the Royal Marines then started to stand up their own commando units. And the organisation wasn't the same. They did not use the same TOE. So this new list will allow you to tailor your force to represent either Army or Marine commandos.
Awesome.
with subtle variations, and adds a whole load of new units that's available in that original 4-7 Commando list.
That's very cool. It allows people then to model different things, or their play style can change a bit, and with a variety of units it means it's not just going to be sort of boring or the same, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's certainly the aspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, it is definitely a hard-hitting force.
Yeah.
But it is a really pricey. I think if you're going in with a commando force in this, it'll be similar to the 4-7 one. You're going to be hitting really hard, but you are going to be outnumbered all the time.
Of course. Yeah.
So expensive. But there's new stuff added on there, and as well, even though obviously Normandy, we're looking at 1944, it's a late war campaign. Warlord were happy for us to kind of step outside of that a little bit and give here's an armies of the commandos. So it isn't quite as much as in my first draft because we ran out of word count.
Yeah, and it got a bit big.
And we did the right thing. We put it on social media and said, you, the community, what do you want? And then we did what the community said they wanted. And that's what we spent our word count on, was what got the top votes.
Yeah, definitely.
But commandos were up there, so they got a lot of word count. So there is options for you to use early and mid-war commando forces, which were organised differently. And also, there's a little bit of the Burma-India theatre.
Awesome.
Of one or two of the lists allow you to take different options to represent commando operations against the Japanese instead of Northwest Europe.
I think that's what people like as well, is that having that variation. Obviously, this book is centred around one area, but, you know, like with the armies of late war France, it gives you a wide berth to go, well, here's the stuff you can use for this specific thing, but you can do this and this to make it for a different theatre entirely. And it allows people to have that variation and really adapt it. It means that if you have a commando force in the Far East, you can buy this book about Normandy and it'll be useful.
Yeah. That's the thing. I really hope, fingers crossed, that we've put together between us all the kind of definitive book for any player who wants to game Normandy, the Anglo-Canadian sector. That you'd like. You wouldn't even want to attempt it without this book, because it's got everything there.
Yeah.
I hope we've achieved that. That's the aim.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, we've. But again, about that balance, you know, there's some stuff for the regular British Army player. There's Royal Artillery units and that sort of thing. We've looked into support units as well. So instead of saying here's a rifle platoon, it's like, well, what if it was a mortar platoon or a machine gun platoon in a defensive role? So you can go for that. Then there's the Canadians. There's the entire armies of Canada, which is again pretty huge and isn't just about 1944. There's other stuff in there.
Yep, everyone that's been asking for Canadians, you're going to have it.
Yeah.
And it is different.
Yeah, and again, yeah, and we had some real subject matter expert input into that, in that our man in Canada is ex-Canadian Army and a Normandy battlefield tour guide, and a curator of a Canadian Army military museum. So
yeah, having his expertise helped.
Did we the right guy? Yes, we did, absolutely. So yeah, it's and again, whilst we're on the subject of, I mentioned Brian and Patch for New Guinea. For all the other books, because they've had the Germans on the other side. Yeah. Every other book I've done. If I didn't mention Carsten, my man in Berlin, who is a curator of the Berlin Military Museum, and which again, you know, when you get help, you start to think, you know, how accurate is this help? Yeah. Do I really want to accept this help? And I asked Carsten a question about something German when we first crossed paths, and he sent me an answer. And I said, look, you know, I'm not trying to be rude here, but can you just justify that and tell me what your source is? And he sent me a photocopy of a original document from the German archives that he photocopied there and then in front of him with Goebbels' signature on it or something like that. And I was like, I will literally never ask you to prove So yeah, he's a fantastic authority, and all of the German input. Without him, you know, the amount of things we write and send it. Yeah, you got that from a British history book, didn't you? Yeah. Here's what really happened.
I mean, the stuff I wrote on a lot of the German stuff, I knew a lot about, and I mean, my core knowledge of the Luftwaffe and their ground forces is pretty good. And having Carsten just fact check you on everything is like, you know, it's like a spell check. You know, you're writing away and then you right click and go, oh, you know, I've got a red line of this. You send it to Carsten. He's like, here's your spell check, but for historical facts.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do all drop the ball from time to time.
Yeah.
I was once told by a company I wrote for, because I made a howling mistake on one of them, which I got picked up from on my first ever book, which I still kick myself for. I apologised profusely to my editor, to my series editor, and he said, he said, the average 300-page history book will have 17 factual errors.
Wow.
Now, I don't know where he got that from. That's what I was told. And we do make mistakes.
Yeah.
We do. But I've never, in all of the stuff I've done with Bolt Action, which I've had Carsten's input, I have never had anyone tell me there's been an error on the German stuff.
Yeah. Big shout out to Carsten.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps up, I think, everything. Is there anything else you want to add before we call it an end?
I was just going to ask, really, from your point of view, having got stuck into these books, whilst I'm here, sick of the sound of my own voice, as I promised I wouldn't be. What's been the most what's been the most fun stuff for you to get stuck into on the latest two books?
You know what? I think since I was a kid, so I grew up in a very rural area of south of Birmingham, and when all the kids were going out at school after school and they were going out and playing with each other and stuff, I couldn't do that because I was miles out in the countryside. So I ended up sat watching the Discovery Channel and the History Channel back when it was actually, factually correct and not bloody whatever they're putting on now about daft aliens and things. Anyway, back when they actually had good documentaries, I watched a lot of that and I read a lot of books about it, and I sort of got obsessed with the Second World War. And ever since then, my knowledge of the Second World War has been pretty in-depth, to the point where I got told off a lot at school because I started telling the history teachers they were wrong. And they didn't like that, because the problem was I then proved them wrong by going, well, here's this book from home, you're wrong. So my knowledge has always been pretty good. And as my wife will tell you, random spewing facts about World War II starts to annoy normal people. And I found this nice little niche game of Bolt Action that I can spew World War II facts and people are actually interested. So having an outlet for my brain just going blah World War II has been really good for me, actually, just to get it all down on paper. So I very much enjoyed that part of it, and also learning new stuff, because I will never say I know everything about the Second World War. I think that is entirely impossible because it was such a vast conflict. But I make it my mission to know as much as I can about as much of it as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So having that, and then knowing a lot about certain things, like, so for instance, I wrote about the Luftwaffe Field Division, and for all those listening, I know that's actually a really weirdly popular army, apparently, according to Warlord. Like, they've got one box set out for it, but lots and lots of people really want to do these figures or really want to do an army. And so I was like, well, I used to reenact back in the day, German. But Luftwaffe Field Division has always been really interesting to me. So having written the list for it and all the history and getting it all down there, and then learning new things about it on top of what I already knew and getting more and more in depth has been really, really interesting and fun. And it's the same thing, I suppose, with you and your 4-7 commander. You've got one particular thing you're like, oh, I really want to write about this. I think that's what I've been doing with some of my stuff that I've written in the two books. It's been, what do I actually really want to write about? And that's really been it. It's just getting all that info down there. And in my head, I look at it and go, can I plan an army around this list or this idea? And if I can't do that, then to me, it doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, in terms of your input into those two books, what was particularly useful was having a very experienced tournament organiser's eye. Because for the first three, we had people who played in tournaments, but I didn't really have that, there was with some of it, but not quite to the same extent. But to have a tournament organizer who can turn around and say, yeah, I can see what you're doing here, but the wily, cheesy player will exploit it in this way.
Yeah.
So here is a way for you to stop that loophole so that this rule doesn't get used, you know, in a kind of nefarious way.
Yeah. No, I get that, definitely.
That's helped.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. I'm really hoping people do actually enjoy these books that are coming up, because I think we've had quite a good collaboration on them. The team of people we've got together, and big shout out to the play testers who actually did run through the lists and told us, you know, came back really good feedback. And I think one of the ones would be really amiss not saying his name is Richard Humble, who has been massively helpful with both of them so far.
Absolutely. You know, Rich was part of the original band back in the Battle of the Bulge day. So, yeah, I've been, myself, Rich and Karsten have worked together on a lot of these. And, yeah, I think because Rich brings a really nice balance of a bit of everything, of great historical knowledge, great hobbyist knowledge, great knowledge of the rules, and you know, a good knowledge of tournaments, how they work. So he's kind of... The way I see him and his input is he is the jack of all trades.
Yeah.
He knows a little, whereas you do get some input sometimes from, say, people of a historical perspective will go, yeah, historically, here's what I suggest. And you go,
yeah.
And then the gamers look at it and go, that will completely break the game.
Yeah.
Conversely, you'll get people who know the game inside out will say, yeah, I want to do this. And it's like, yeah, but they didn't have laser guns.
Yeah.
So... we can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's so it's nice to have that sort of fulcrum, that balance in the middle of it all. Really.
Yeah, awesome. So it has been absolutely fantastic talking to you. And one last thing before we sort of tie it up is we have got here 2 of your publications. We've got Battle of France and Papua New Guinea. These are going to be given away. So
the signed ones, which are they're worth a lot more without my signature.
Yes, yeah. One thing I will say is we're going to be giving these away. So after 50 subscribers to the channel, we're going to be giving away 1 to a subscriber, and then the real stretch goal here, after 100 subscribers to the channel, we're going to be giving away the other one. So like and share this video on Facebook and on YouTube, and let's get this spread out a bit, and hopefully then we'll get Mark back on the channel when we've got a release of the Anglo-Canadian sector, and we'll be talking more in depth, more specifically about that book and about the hobby around it as well.
And we can talk about book 5, the one we're co-authoring, 50-50.
Ooh, yeah.
I can't talk about that yet, but I don't think it's going to take much of an IQ to work out that if the Anglo-Canadian sector has been done, there's a gap that needs filling. But
we'll talk about that on a future day. But thank you very much for your time, Mark. And it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I shall catch you again soon.